8th grade, for our next lesson, we're going to talk about composition. And that just means how you arrange your subject inside the paper or the photograph that you're working on.
So this time we're going to talk about composition. There are two main types of composition that I want you to focus on. And the first one is this lovely picture of these three pears. This is something that's called a closed composition. And it's called closed because the entire frame of the picture, or the photograph in this case, is kind of caging in the pears. They are trapped inside the picture frame. They're closed inside the box. If I go back to this picture, you will see that the pears, the same three pears, are arranged a little bit differently. This is called an open composition because the pears seem to be kind of escaping from the border of the photograph or the picture or painting, whatever you're working with. If something is sitting on the edge and you don't really see all of it because it's kind of outside the borders of the project, that is called an open composition. So let's look at two together so that you can see it here. On the top, closed composition. The pears are trapped. On the bottom, open composition. The pears are escaping the confines of the border. We're going to focus on two of these compositions for your next project. I want you to try one of each. We're going to draw a picture of your shoe. So please pull your shoe off your foot, sit it on the table, or if you are flexible enough, you can just fling your foot right up onto the table itself. And I want you to try to draw a picture, one with a closed composition. So one, you're just taking the entire shoe and you're going to draw the whole thing. No, you cannot trace it. You need to draw the entire thing inside a little square that you draw on your paper. And for the second square, you're going to draw it as if it is super zoomed up close. So you're going to see that the edges of the shoe are going to run off the edge of the paper. And all you'll be left with is our open composition.
Okay, so on our paper today, I want you to draw two pictures. On our paper today, I would like you to draw two squares. You've already watched the little intro on composition, so you know that I would like you to draw two versions of the same project, an open composition and a closed composition. And we're going to draw our shoes. So here's a shoe. You can't exactly trace it when you're working in your sketchbook, so you just need to draw what you see by looking at this shoe. If it's a closed composition, I want to draw the entire thing. So I'm going to try and get as much of this on the paper as I can. Since I'm drawing on our manila paper, you don't see it very well if I use a pencil, so I'm actually going to give it a try with a marker, and I'm going to draw the whole thing. You can look at this shoe from any angle you like. If this is the most interesting composition, you're looking at the top of the shoe, you can draw it from the side. If you'd rather draw it from the bottom, whichever you like. But remember, it's a closed composition, so you have to draw the whole thing. And I'm just going to draw kind of on a diagonal so I can get the entire thing in. I would suggest that you draw with your pencil because, of course, as we all know from being in school for all these years, it's very difficult to erase marker. It's way easier to erase pencil, so always try and pencil first. If the shoes that you're currently wearing are not very interesting, feel free to get up and go find a different pair. And the ones in the art room at the middle school, you will know that I have some fun donated ones that we've got from somewhere. They are very old, but they are very interesting. So what you want to do is draw one of those, then feel free to help yourself and draw one of those. But, and I have to say it every year, and I don't really know why, don't stick your nose in the shoe. I don't know why my 8th graders feel like they have to stick their nose inside a shoe that came from Goodwill, but they do. So I guess sniff at your own risk. You can see I'm trying to look closely at every part of this shoe, and I'm trying to see just how many different lines and different things are going on here. If I'm drawing the edge of the strap right here, you see there's two lines on the strap. If I am drawing the little logo-y bit in the middle. There's actually two little circles there that I missed for the logo bit. Try to draw as closely as you can to what you're seeing, not just what your brain says a shoe looks like, but what you're actually seeing. Alright, so there's my closed composition, and if I'd like to, I can go back in here and I can add all of the little decorations and details to the center. It will definitely make this, I will definitely make this project more interesting, but for the sake of time, let's move on a bit so you can see what I'm going to do for the next one. For an open composition, you want to draw something zoomed in super close. So if I'm looking at my shoe really close to my camera, then I would draw just that part that I see. So let's come back down here, make sure we're in focus, and we're going to draw just a portion of it. Since, of course, this part is the most interesting part of our composition, let's draw the straps again. Let's draw the exact same angle, but this time really super up close. So this would be that curve of the first strap. Oops. Here would be the second one. Here's the little strange logo for a shoe called Keens. I don't know why it's a V, but there it is. Maybe it's a K, but I feel like it's upside down if it's a K. At some point you're going to realize that one of these is more interesting than the other. One composition is going to be more interesting to look at than the other. So that's the one you will continue with. But before you decide which one you're going to do, I do want you to practice both of them. There are many times when you're creating a project or a photograph, you're trying to take a photograph, where you're going to find that one or the other of the compositions is more appropriate. So let's say, for example, you're trying to take a picture of a person. Most of the time we don't do a closed composition of a person because that means the camera needs to be really, really far away in order to get everything into the frame. A lot of portraits, a lot of pictures of your friends, or even selfies that you take by yourself are all open composition because, of course, you just have your head and maybe the shoulders in the picture and you don't see the rest of it. When we get to our portrait lesson, we'll talk more about head and shoulders portraits. For right now, let's just focus in on our shoes. So here you got a nice little composition of my shoe. Again, one of them is going to seem more interesting to you than the other. Personally, I think for this next part of the project, I'm going to focus on the open composition because I think this is a much more interesting thing to look at than just the little jelly bean shape of my shoe. So I'm going to take this paper, I'm going to put it off to the side, I'm going to come back in with a black piece of colored paper. Now, on my black piece of colored paper, I'm going to draw this square. So this square that I drew in here is going to be the exact square of my black colored paper. So I'm going to draw the entire shoe again. And you probably don't want to watch that in real time, so let's watch that in time lapse. Alright, it looks like you can see the pencil lines pretty well, even though it is black paper. So now I'm going to take some regular old school glue, Elmer's school glue, and I am going to outline every one of my pencil lines in glue. It is a little tricky, especially if you're not paying attention to the lines that you've already created, because you can easily drag your hand across them and make a big smear. Go slowly. Try not to squeeze too hard, but I do want you to outline every single one of the lines that you made. Now, if you were very careful and you did a lot of details, you might need to do a little bit of editing or taking out some of the smaller details. You don't want to take out too many because it is kind of the point to have something to color in when we get to the coloring in stage. Don't be afraid to wipe up any little smears or smudges that you have. And now you can probably watch this in time lapse too, because it's not very exciting to watch me glue. Alright, you can see everything has been outlined. Sometimes the glue likes to pull together on itself a little bit, and you'll see some spots where it's a little thinner than others. That's not a big deal. You can just let that go the way it is. Now we just have to wait for this to completely dry. Once it is completely dry, we're going to come back in with a special material that we haven't used before, and we're going to get it all nice and colored in. Alright, you can see my glue has mainly dried. I do have a couple of little white areas left where the glue isn't dried completely in the center, but if I put my fingers on it, that's not going to smear. So I'm going to move ahead and show you the next step. Now it's time to do some coloring, and the reason why we call it a stained glass project is because we're going to leave the glue ribbing areas without color. They're going to be plain, so it gives us that look of the leading that goes in the center of stained glass. Now here at the school we're going to use some oil pastels. If you don't have oil pastels, then crayons are just a spectacular option. Oil pastels are just mainly a fancier kind of crayon. If you ever get one of those little art kits that come, you have all of these little waxy things on the side, those are actually probably oil pastels. So you can see I have a nice selections of colors here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start coloring in all of the areas between the glue lines. Now, a few tricks to using oil pastels. Don't forget to look at the next how-to video about oil pastels so that you can see a couple different ways to use it. But really quickly here I'm going to show you. You don't want to press hard with an oil pastel. You want to let the weight of the material just apply it to the paper itself. The minute you press hard, it's on there pretty much permanently. Not that we're planning on removing this, but you can't do any good blending effects if you press too hard to start with. So I've got some pink here. Now, I should probably also mention, this does not have to be the color of the shoe that you actually used, unless you really want it to be the color of the shoe that you actually drew. It can be any color. Crazy colors are fun. If I decide that I want to mix this pink with a little bit of orange, all I can do is just come right back in and color right over the top, and I get a nice blending effect. The more colors you layer, the more interesting the effect. So if I come back here with the pink again, and you can see as it starts to fill in that space, you get a nice blended effect and a darker color. You don't see any of that black paper showing through. The other trick I like to use all the time is I like to add some white. So if I just take this white oil pastel and I go right on top of the project that that area where I just colored, I'm going to let that white pick up the color just a little bit more and give it almost a shine or a little bit of a highlight. The white almost does a bit of blending by itself, but you will see that the oil pastel does come off onto the tip. So if you want to do another area with white but you don't want that other color showing through, just wipe it off on the side. I gotta admit, oil pastels are not my favorite material. I almost never use them. I do show people how to use them because that's my job as an art teacher, but I really am not a fan in general. I'm a good crayon colorer, but oil pastels tend to bother me a little bit just because you end up with these little crumbly bits that seem to stick everywhere. Please don't let my opinion of the subject matter or of the materials sway you in any way. Try them out, test them. If you have a chance to get to them and use them, see what you think, and then I would love to hear actually your comments on them. So make sure that when you submit your project that you also give me your comments on what you think about oil pastels, if there's something we should add into the mix and use a little bit more, or if there's something you would rather not ever use again. That's alright by me. Okay, I'm going to time lapse you so you can see me coloring in the entire thing, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, here we go. Here is a completely colored in project. You can see that now it gets completely away from the shoe. You don't actually see that it was a shoe at all, but it does make a lot of interesting composition for us to look at. Please make sure that you take a picture of it and turn it into the Google Classroom so I can see that you have completed the assignment. And then may I highly suggest that you take a picture of it to put it into your slide presentation, your digital portfolio, because that assignment will be due at the end of the marking period. So make sure that you are finished and keeping all of those projects updated as you go. Thanks for joining me again. We'll see you again later. Bye.